Hello everybody. Today we are going to be taking a look at commander agnostic combos in cPDH and talking about how strong I think they are just in a complete vacuum. Obviously, as a prerequisite to this video, none of this is final, and having different commanders can very much change how strong or weak these combos are. This is simply in a vacuum, completely ignoring what the commanders are or any of that stuff. We'll talk about what these combos are, what they do, what makes them strong or potentially weaker than other combos. So the first one on our list here is Archaeomancer. You'll notice that I have Archaeomancer and Ghostly Flicker, and that's because with the Archaeomancer card specifically, this is going to indicate the Archaeomancer snap combos, or Archaeomancer dramatic reversal combos, things of that nature. So Archaeomancer combos are typically fairly compact in terms of they just need an Archaeomancer effect plus one specific card for the actual combo, but they also require a lot of setup. So like Archaeomancer plus Snap requires you to have 2 lands that tap for at least 6 mana to just go infinite on the casts, and 2 lands that tap for 7 mana if you want to make infinite mana with the combo. And Archaeomancer plus Dramatic Reversal combos require you to have a lot of mana rocks in play, as well as something like a Banishing Knack on one of your creatures to keep bouncing the Archaeomancer, or something like that. So, while they can be very efficient, and they don't require you to play many bad cards, they still require a lot of setup. So, I'm leaning somewhere in the A or B tier. We'll go with A for now and see if we need to adjust that as we go. Next up, we have Banishing Knack, Retraction Helix combos. So these combos are good for a couple reasons. You have Banishing Knack and Retraction Helix, which are 2 exactly identical cards, except for the name, which means you get to play 2 copies of your combo piece. They also get a lot of pieces that are enablers and outlets. So for example, in a Banishing Knack deck, Nettle Drone is often one of the best cards because it can untap itself whenever you cast a colorless spell, or it can tap to ping an opponent, so it can be both an outlet or an enabler for your Banishing Knack combos. Typically what you need with Banishing Knack combos is a Banishing Knack effect, an enabler that is an untapper, so like a Battered Golem or a Zephyr Scribe, something that can untap itself based on a condition. And then you need an outlet, something that will deal damage through those combos. For example, if you have a Battered Golem, which untaps whenever an artifact comes into play, you need to have something like a Reckless Fireweaver, which deals 1 damage to each opponent whenever an artifact comes into play. And then you need to have something that you can constantly cast and return to your hand with the Banishing Knack to trigger your enabler and outlet. For example, in the case of Battered Golem and Reckless Fireweaver, you need a 0-cost artifact. So in that scenario, you need 4 cards. So a 4-card combo is not great, but they are very redundant. However, you do typically want to be in at least blue-red for these combos, so it is a bit color restrictive. Whereas, for example, the Archaeomancer combos are not color restrictive. You can do them in mono-blue perfectly fine. So just due to color restrictions and requiring so many pieces, I'll put it in B tier. Also, a lot of their pieces in a Knack combo deck are kind of do-nothing cards whenever you're not comboing off. So it does struggle a bit for those reasons. Next up we have First Day of Class. This is a persist combo, looking to sacrifice a creature with persist, usually something like a putrid goblin, and bring it back repeatedly, and have an outlet like a impact tremors effect in play that will deal damage repeatedly. You can also be making infinite mana if you have a sack outlet like Ashnod's Altar or Skirk Prospector. So, in reality, what you need for this combo is specifically First Day of Class, any persist creature, and a sacrifice outlet, and then you need some kind of enabler. It varies from deck to deck what that enabler is, if it's an impact tremors effect, or if your sacrifice outlet is making mana, then you can just have some kind of infinite mana outlet, which could be in your command zone potentially. So this combo is again another 3 to 4 card combo. It does require specifically First Day of Class, unless it's green, and then you can use Ivy Lane Denizen as well. So that one's a little bit overlapping, but First Day of Class is also an instant, so you can do it during someone else's turn. And especially if you're in a more aggressive style deck that's just happening to play a combo like Garna, First Day of Class on its own is just a pretty decent card, putting a +1/+1 counter on all of your creatures and giving them haste if they come into play this turn. And you also get to discard and draw a card, so it gives you a bit of card selection as well. So I think due to all of those factors, I'm actually inclined to put First Day of Class somewhere in the A tier. I just think the cards are pretty strong on their own, and they all have their own uses, aside from the persist creature specifically, and even then, in a pinch, since you're playing sacrifice outlets, it can be 2 bodies. Next up, we have Freed from the Real combos. This is an enchantment aura that lets you pay a blue to tap or untap the enchanted creature. Spoiler, I think this is probably an S tier combo route. So, if you're playing Freed from the Real, all you really need is anything that taps to untap a land or any other permanent, something like that. And then you need something that taps for blue and 1 more mana, be it colorless, any color, depends on your outlet. So you need something that taps for 2 mana, which is not that difficult to achieve. So that's 3 cards. Now, Freed from the Real is the only version of its effect, but there are a lot of similar effects. You have Galvanic Alchemist and Vigan Graft Mage are both additional ways in blue to untap things. So this can be mono blue combo, it can easily be Simic combo, and it can work in other colors as well. So I think this combo is very strong in that regard. Additionally, if you're ever in a situation where you, for some reason, get the Freed from the Real to resolve, and then they try to remove your creature, you can just put another untap trigger on the stack. That probably should never happen, but if it does, there is that. And another big plus is that those 2 other Freed from the Real effects, they are more expensive, but they're also on wizards, and one of those wizards has Soul Bond. So it's a non-targeting way to soul bond to another creature and allow you to untap it. It can change its targets whenever creatures come into play, and it's a wizard, so any card that has wizard cycling can go and tutor it, which just means you get so many tutors. You get the transmute cards like Drift of Phantasm, since you're in blue, is guaranteed. And both the Freed from the Real and the Galvanic Alchemist are 3 mana. And you get Wizard Cycling or the Galvanic Alchemist, or the Vigan Graft Mage. If you're in white, you can tutor for auras and tutor up the Freed from the Real. It's just so efficient and very strong, and can potentially end the game very quickly as well, which a lot of these other combos take a bit too much setup to be able to do efficiently, especially if you're in Simic with a land untapper. You can win the game on turn 3 with Freed from the Real combos. Next up we have Ghostly Flicker combos. I think Flicker combos are also probably in the S tier, just because Flicker, so in competitive pauper EDH, we use a lot of creatures that have enter the battlefield effects, because we really like to get guaranteed value out of every card we play. We don't play cards just because they have big stats. So being able to flicker 2 of those creatures is always going to be a valuable effect, at worst, with Flicker, Ghostly Flicker, and Displace. Additionally, it's very easy to play the other creatures for this combo. So this combo typically entails Ghostly Flicker, Peregrine Drake, which is a 5 mana, 2/3 flyer, and when it comes into play, it untaps 5 lands, so it essentially costs 0 mana. And then an Archaeomancer, or any creature with a similar effect, to get back the Ghostly Flicker. And this combo establishes infinite mana, gives you infinite cast of the Ghostly Flicker, and infinite creature ETBs. So outlets are very easy to find for this combo. Additionally, since you'll probably be playing 4 to 6 Archaeomancer effects, if you have 2 of them in play, whenever you make your infinite mana with Ghostly Flicker, you can then just start casting your Flicker, targeting both Archaeomancers, and getting back the Ghostly Flicker and any other instant or sorcery. So you can easily loop other things and just turn any card like a lightning bolt into a win condition. So the combo is very compact and efficient. It is a bit mana intensive since you have to play a 5 mana creature, or do some extra setup with cards like High Tide, or lands that tap for multiple mana with a Cloud of Fairies, something like that. So it can get a little bit difficult in those situations, and Peregrine Drake is the only version of that big of an effect that works with Flicker. Additionally, you have to rely on your graveyard, so this combo can just lose to Grave Hate, which is why I think it's actually worse than Freed from the Real in terms of generic comboing. But still, all of the cards in this combo are very easy to slot into your deck and make use of, regardless of who your commander is. And as soon as you get outside of mono blue, you get a bunch of extra options. You get additional outlets, you get recursion with black, you get extra flicker spells if you're in white. Green doesn't make as much use of this, but they can make their Peregrine Drake and Cloud of Fairies even more mana positive pretty easily, which helps with Cloud of Fairies combos. Next up we have High Tide. So typically High Tide combos are going to overlap a lot with Archaeomancer or Ghostly Flicker combos, but there are also instances where you just have like Mystic Sanctuary loops somehow, or you just get your High Tide back 2 or 3 times and then combo off with a different combo. So High Tide is used in a lot of these combos, and it's also just an enabler, but I just kind of want to talk about the card in general in terms of combo decks. High Tide makes every island in play tap for extra mana, which can be very strong, especially if you're playing like a Freed from the Real combo or a Ghostly Flicker and you're playing Cloud of Fairies, any of those kind of scenarios. However, it does also enable your opponents to tap their islands for extra mana, so it can help them potentially interact more with you. So I'm just going to put the card in B tier here. Because it does have positives and negatives, it's also the only version of its effect. And there's just better ways to be comboing in blue without High Tide. But if you're in mono blue, I think High Tide is perfectly reasonable. Next up we have Ivy Lane Denizen. These combos are fairly similar to the first day of class combos. However, it's a slightly different color combination. Also, you can use Ivy Lane Denizen with creatures that are not repeatedly entering the battlefield. So, for example, Ivy Lane plus Presence of Gond on a Devoted Druid will go infinite, because you can put the counter back on the Devoted Druid and then remove that counter by putting a -1/-1 counter on it to untap it, which first day of class does not enable. So the combo lines are different. Additionally, this is just a creature that you can throw out there and just have it be in play at any time. You don't have to cast it the turn you're going for the combo. However, you do have to play green for this combo, which is a legitimate downside because I do not think green is very good. So I'm debating between B or C tier for this combo. It's also a 4-mana creature, and typically it's another 3 to 4 card combo. And sometimes those cards are useful outside of the combo, but sometimes they're just not very effective. Next up we have Mirror Retriever. This is a completely colorless combo, utilizing Mirror Retriever, Workshop Assistant, Ashnod's Altar, and a cost reducer, like Boundary Inspector, to make infinite colorless mana and artifact, creature, ETB, and LTB triggers. So, at first glance, this is like, wow, it's a colorless combo. How bad could it be? But this is a 4-card combo with very little redundancy. There's no replacement for Mirror Retriever or Workshop Assistant or Ashnod's Altar. So those 3 cards, you always have to find exactly those 3 cards. It's not like Archaeomancer where you have 6 different effects that do the same thing. Additionally, it's a 4-card combo that doesn't give you an outlet. So you need another card for an outlet, and it only makes colorless mana or infinite ETB LTB triggers. So if that outlet is like a Reckless Fireweaver, that's great. But sometimes that's just not enough. So this is easily the worst combo, in my opinion. It's just so bad. It's so hard to find all of those pieces and get them all into play and get the loop started. Next up we have Pili Pala combos. Typically this is going to combo with Careful Cultivation to make infinite mana of any color. And actually, the Pili Pala Careful Cultivation combo is not that bad because it is 2 cards to make infinite mana, which I do like. However, it does require you to be in green, and it does require you to play Pili Pala, who is typically not going to be very good on its own. It's not very good without the combo, and you're going to want to hold that Careful Cultivation until you have the Pili Pala. So there's a bit of tension there. Additionally, there's no redundancy for this combo, so I'm going to put it in C tier. I do think it's potentially better than Ivy Lane, just because it's 2-card combo for infinite mana, and it's very easy to find outlets for infinite colored mana. Additionally, it's potentially a very early win if you manage to find Pili Pala and the Careful Cultivation very early on in your opening hand. Next up we have Presence of Gond combos. As we mentioned before, these do sometimes include Ivy Lane Denizen. However, you can also use cards like Midnight Guard and other such effects. So it does have multiple routes, and typically this combo is just going to make infinite 1/1s, which is better in some cases than making infinite mana, because if you don't have an outlet, especially not in your command zone, you can just pass the turn And if nobody deals with your board state or wins, then you don't need an outlet because you have infinite creatures and they can just attack everybody. So there is some merit to this combo. Once again, it is a green combo, and it does not have any redundancy in most of the effects, but it's still decent. It's a nice 2-card, potentially 3-card combo. So I'll put it up here in B tier. I think it's probably better than High Tide. Additionally, if you're in white with the Presence of Gond Midnight Guard combo, you can play Aura Tutors. So it's probably competing with Banishing Knack. Top of B tier in my opinion. Next up we have Thermopod. This is a sacrifice outlet that makes a red mana. Typically what you'll see this used for is combos in Rakdos with Fake Your Death and Ardent Elementalist, or other such effects. In some of those combos, Thermopod can also be replaced with Ashnod's Altar and a mana filter, things of that type. But yeah, these are used in black-red, typically to make infinite mana, or go mana neutral and just get infinite death triggers, so on and so forth. So then it requires an outlet, becomes a 3 or 4 card combo. And additionally, Thermopod has a similar problem to Peregrine Drake in the fact that it doesn't really have any redundancy. So Thermopod is good. It's a good color combination. It's just not quite as impactful or as fast or as redundant as some of the higher tier combos. It's mainly just the fact that Thermopod doesn't have any redundant pieces. Rakdos actually has access to a few Archaeomancer effects with Revolutionist and Ardent Elementalist, as well as a lot of the effects that bring a creature back whenever it dies. So there is some validity here. And finally we have Viridian longbow combos. These are typically very similar to Freed from the Real combos, and sometimes it's just used as an outlet for Freed from the Real combos. Typically these combos are going to be more commander-centric. But yeah, this just allows a creature to tap to deal damage. And typically this is more of an outlet than anything. But I figured I'd still point it out here. It's often used with like Presence of Gond combos on another creature. Like if you have Presence of Gond and Ivy Lane and Devoted Druid, and you're making infinite creatures, and then you have Midnight Guard with a Viridian longbow, it can be used as an outlet there. More often than not, this is just used as an outlet, and I do not think it's very efficient, but it is sometimes necessary if you're in like monocolor decks to be used as an outlet for some things, but typically I don't think this is very strong. It can be used as an outlet for Freed from the Real or Dramatic Reversal combos. But yeah, unless you have to be playing this card, I probably would not play it. So yeah, these are the general combos that I could think of off the top of my head for this video. If there are any that I missed, be sure to leave them in the comments down below, and maybe we'll talk about them in a different video. Hopefully you guys liked this. If you did, be sure to leave a like below, and go ahead and subscribe while you're down there if you made it this far into the video. Thank you all for watching. I hope you have a great day, and I'll see you all next time.